Hello, everyone. I hope you are doing well today. In this video, I wanted to look at generally what is going on with Star Citizen and my thoughts on the playability initiative that they have talked about. I want to especially talk about the possibility of less features this year and what that means for us as players. Besides that, though, thank you for being here and let's talk Star Citizen. So, first off, if you aren't sure what I'm referring to, back in December, Chris Roberts put out a letter from the chairman talking about 2025 and what their overall goal is. Chris stated that he wanted this year to be focused on playability and separating the testing process for newer features, so that the live environment stays in the best state possible. Generally speaking, though, this letter wasn't the most informative as to specifics. But then, of course, we just had a 3 hour long Star Citizen Live, which started to dig into what this actually means for Star Citizen. This live stream had Jared and Benoit talking about numerous different issues and bugs related to what we experience as players. But most importantly, it gave us a better idea of what this will look like over the course of the year. So, to sum up what the general plan is, I'll say this. Jared said they want to put monthly patches that focus more on getting the game in a better state and more content that is story driven, meaning some of the people creating bigger features like crafting and base building will be taken off those tasks and put on other tasks like fixing the transit system and other problematic parts of the game. This also means that Jared's shows will be changing. Whilst we will still have all the normal shows plus the new Behind the Ship series, we won't see them nearly as often, and we most likely won't be seeing a ton of new features in these shows. More specifically, they said that ISC and SCL will both be on Thursdays and they will just take turns week after week. So, no Thursday, Friday. It'll be, Thursday ISC, next Thursday SCL, and then the occasional behind the ship. Now, that is a basic, very, very basic summary of what Jared said. And whilst I believe that this is the plan, it is impossible to really understand what will be happening going forward until we get some more direct communication. Hopefully, soon, we get some news from a roadmap roundup that really starts to nail down what we will actually be seeing from this CIG this year. But from all this information that we have received from this SCL, one of the biggest questions that I know tons of players have, are we still getting any new features this year, or are we only getting quality of life updates to what we currently have? This is a pretty massive question that is probably a genuine concern for most. Now, I do want to take a quick pause from feature talk and what's going on the rest of the year and just address the rest of the live stream. Believe it or not, the portion that we're talking about in this video was only about 15 to 30 minutes of the actual live stream. The rest of the 2.5 hours they spent talking was about issues with the game, bugs, how they occur, how they plan on fixing them, restructuring teams so that they can address these issues, as well as parts of their teams that they might have neglected over time that created more issues. Now, it really was a whole lot of information, and I wanna simply say I applaud Jared and Benoit for sitting there, taking the heat, and being very transparent about what's going on and how they plan on fixing it. I think that was a breath of fresh air to hear as a player, especially right now when there's not a lot of information to go around when it comes to Star Citizen. Outside of that, we're not gonna be talking about a lot of the bugs in this video. We all know the main issues that go on with this game. There's no point on really reiterating them, and I heavily encourage you to watch the live stream if you have the time to. Other than that, we're just not gonna be talking about the bugs too much in this video, and mainly talking about the actual plan going forward for 2025. Now, to get into this a little bit more, I want to say I really do appreciate their initiative towards getting this game into a better place that is genuinely playable and hardened with minimal game breaking bugs. I don't think that is a bad thing at all. But I will say that there is no doubt that this feels like a very weird shift in momentum. CitizenCon 2024 really set the bar for what they want to do with much of this game. Whilst they are still clearly progressing towards 1.0 and those long awaited features, hearing this focus on playability is a sharp turn in comparison to what we thought might come this year. Now, again, this is just an educated guess. They have not talked about what specifically will be coming this year, but I wanted to discuss with you guys what it could look like over the course of the year. So let's talk about features first. Jared was very big on the topic that big groundbreaking features will not be coming nearly as often this year. So, what will? Well, I think that many of the features we will see this year are going to be limited to smaller, low impact features. This means features like Maelstrom and the dynamic economy are most likely not going to be coming in the near future. I see this as a disappointing but needed change for the game. As much as I can't wait for many of those big ticket features that CIG talks about, I know that improving the foundation of Star Citizen will make implementing those features less painful. So let's think about some features that could make it in this year, given the initiative. Like I said earlier, low impact features seemingly could be what we get this year. Some features similar to things like the ladder rework, that is seemingly a small feature, though would take away so much frustration. Then we have general movement and player interaction changes, adding the sliding mechanic they talked about a while ago, and improving the way players interact with menus by adding things like the ability to stack items. The Pyro Solar Flare would be an awesome addition this year, helping narrow in that deadly feeling that comes with the system. I'm gonna be completely real with you though. As a player that really loves a lot of these features that they are adding to the game, naturally it worries me a little bit knowing that this year is going to be a lot lighter on those features, or at least it seems like it will. But at the same time, even though I am someone that loves the idea of these big features like Maelstrom, base building, crafting, all of that jazz that sounds really great for 1.0, I know that creating that fundamental experience that is solid and less buggy is extremely important. And I have no idea if those smaller low impact features we talked about earlier are going to be implemented, but I do think if that they want to focus on quality of life and adding things in that won't break the game, I think adding those smaller features that won't necessarily be the biggest game changer, but create a more solid, fluid experience is a very positive change. I would love to know what smaller features do you think, or would you want them to add this year? Because there are plenty of small features like suit lockers that I would love to see them add this year that would just create just generally a better experience for all players without being such a large feature. And I really would love to hear the smaller features that maybe are lower impact that you would want in the game. Outside of that, though, they have made it very clear that they want this year to be focused as well on story driven content. Now, I am not sure what that means, but like I mentioned in my last video, I don't think the narrative side of Star Citizen is there yet at all. As much as I've enjoyed some of these missions from Fight for Pyro, the overall narrative has almost been completely absent from these. Even basic narrative elements like voice lines, guiding, and announcing certain core moments to the player are not there. The only narrative aspect to this event really has been the uniforms that these enemies have. Based off the way they look, you can tell which faction they are from, and that is about it, excluding, of course, the description for the contract. I really hope CIG takes the time to make narrative missions over the next year really feel like an actual narrative in the game. I will say this about Star Citizen. Right now, there isn't a ton of depthful and rewarding gameplay. There are no true long term goals, and there isn't really anything to progress in. But if CIG can keep developing and improving on narrative missions, I think some of that missing depth won't be nearly as bothersome. As much as I want more personally rewarding gameplay, narrative gameplay could be a solid placeholder for what we need as players. Giving us a side to fight for and trying to change the tide of these faction wars can be an awesome incentive. But CIG needs to nail that down a little bit more. Right now, these feel like normal basic missions we always have. And we need them to feel like true narrative content if this is what they plan on pushing out this year. Now, as you may or may not know from my videos, I do love having a little bit of fun talking about what we could get in the future for Star Citizen. As you might say, huffing some hopium and just having a little bit of fun brainstorming what we could get. Now, of course, it's a little bit different this time because, less features this year, more story driven stuff. So, I have two main things I want to talk about here. The first one is how Jared mentioned in the SCL how Pyro will change by the end of the year based off of this narrative driven stuff. What does that mean exactly? I am not sure. But my first and probably only guess is that the winning faction will create more landing zones or outposts around Pyro. Again, I am, that's a pretty basic addition, I feel like. I don't think that that should be the final end reward, I guess, for the winning faction, I guess. But at the end of the day, I'm not CIG. I don't know what their plan is. I think that's a possible change that could happen to Pyro, but then again, I'm not too sure. The second thing is the Valacar. Now I know this is a feature, so this one is a you got to take it with a little bit more of a grain of salt. But they did mention earlier how they wanted the Valacar to be introduced with one of these bigger type of events. One where you're not going to accept it in the contract manager, and you're actually going to have to go through certain steps or obstacles to get to the Valacar mission of sorts, or just the monster hunting experience as a whole. And of course, we have no idea what this will look like in the future, but they did say they want to implement this in some sort of big mission format. And of course, with this whole narrative driven stuff, I think there is a chance that the Valacar gets implemented into this narrative stuff. But then again, I'm purely speculating right now. And if this does come true, cool. But if it doesn't, I just wouldn't be surprised too much. Now, just a couple other things. I do think that there's a few changes they could add to the narrative stuff right now that would be positive for just the overall environment and atmosphere for this content. First thing is voice lines. Having a voice line from your faction's leader, I think, would be really cool every now and then. Just explaining what's going on. If you're during in the mission, explaining like what's going on, how you're helping, what you need to do. I think that would be a really solid addition just to add a little bit more life to the missions. The second thing is for the mission where you're supposed to go out and protect a Mercury Star Runner. I think that might be the ship for all three factions, but I know it is for my faction. One of the missions we had like a year or two ago was a very similar mission where you go out and protect a ship. But when you got to that ship location, you would receive a ton of voice lines from the person you were protecting, usually based off of what's currently going on. Like, oh, thank God you're here. And then, hey, I'm taking a lot of hits. I really need help. And then if they die or you win, they would have a voice line for that as well. I think that's a really subtle change, but would be really nice to hear every now and then. That very, very deafening silence that you have during a lot of these missions is what kind of takes you out of it. Of course, there's a lot more that they could do narratively that'll really bring you into that story. But for the most part, I think some of these small changes could be really positive just for creating a little bit more atmosphere. Now, enough of speculating and whatnot. I know that wasn't a whole lot, but I wanted to keep it pretty minimal because, until we get some more information, everything is speculation. Overall, though, these changes are positive. Knowing that we might not get many new features is still mildly disappointing, but I also cannot wait to have a more polished and solid game for what we have now. I personally think you can still expect some features this year that will be exciting and add more to the verse, but I would mainly expect to see the experience we have now refined to create a great foundation for CIG to work on in the future. Now, I am really excited to hear more about what's going to go on for the next few patches and how this narrative stuff is going to change over the course of the year. But it really is going to be a bit of a waiting game until we get our next roadmap roundup and we just get a little bit more information about what is going on and how things are going to change a little bit. Besides that, though, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the support I've been getting recently. All the comments have been incredibly nice, and it's been a very enjoyable experience putting some of these videos out. Besides that, I have, of course, a community Discord. It's very bare bones, but I will put that in the video description and my channel description as well. I am working on membership stuff. If that is totally optional stuff, if you would like to join that whenever I get that out, I appreciate the support more than you'll ever know. But that stuff is completely unnecessary unless you really would like to do that. All of the support I get right now is more than enough, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. Comment down below any of your thoughts on all these changes. Do you believe them? Do you think it's actually going to change? Are you excited for what's going to come this year? Anything you want, put it in the comments down below. I'll try and respond if I can. Besides that, thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video.